All right, you guys, here I'm going to flesh out this activity where we are flipping coins without getting sore. So we're asking our graphing calculator to simulate the flipping of 300 coins. So what I've done to start is I've drawn in this horizontal line for all of these boxes down below. So I'd like you to start off by doing the same thing. So what that horizontal bar represents is the theoretical chance of getting a head on any given coin flip. So let me write that up above. Theoretically, we have a 1 in 2 chance of getting a head on any flip of a coin. Okay, so to start things off, I want you to clear your lists. So remember that we always clear, we do not delete. So let me lay my calculator down right here. I'm going to go Stat, Edit, and I'm going to go to the top. I want to clear and then hit Enter. So I've cleared my first list. I'm up at the L2, Clear, Enter. I've cleared my second list. Same with the third and the fourth. So I have all of my lists nice and clear. That was the first step. Step 2, I want to go back home. Everything that I'm going to do from my home screen. So I want to generate a sequence of numbers between 1 and 300. So I want the positive integers 1 to 300. No one wants to type that in by hand. So we're going to ask our calculator to make a list of the positive integers 1 to 300. So to do that, we're going to hit Second, Stat. We're going to go to our ops, our operations. We want our fifth choice. So if you have a fancier calculator than mine, it's going to show up as a series of questions. So it's going to give you a list of prompts, and you have to type in X, and then another X, and then a 1, and a 300. So here I'm showing X, 1, 300. Okay, if you have a fancier calculator than mine, you would hit Enter at that point, and it will show up on the home screen just like mine right now. From here, that little arrow to the right, we have to store it. So I want to stow it. Stow is right above on, so I hit Enter right there, and I see a little arrow pop up on my home screen. So I want to store it, stow it in the L1. So second one. So right there, when I hit Enter, my calculator is going to show me the first little bit of my 1 through 300 sequence. If I went back to my list, I would see numbers 1 through 300. So what that's representing for me are trials. So we're going to look at 300 trials of flipping coins. Next step, we want to actually flip those 300 coins, right? We're not doing it by hand, so we have to tell our calculator certain instructions. So we're going to say, okay, every 1 that shows up, let's say that that's a head. Any 0 that shows up, let's say that's tails. So next, we're going to go Math, go over to Probability. It's our fifth choice. I hit Enter, and I want to generate random digits from 0 to 1, 0, 1. And I want 300 of them because I'm modeling flipping a coin 300 times. Close the parentheses, store it in the L2. So stow, right there, stow, slide back down, and L2. So now I hit enter. Okay, we are not going to match. Let me explain what mine came up as. So remember that we're simulating coin flips. We've assigned the digit 1 to it being a head and a 0 to being a tails. Again, we are not going to match. In my example here, my first flip was a head. The next one was a tail, and then a tail, and then a head, head, tail, head. Okay, you might have all zeros. You might have all ones. You might have it alternate. Yours can look different than mine. Again, it's just randomly generating zeros and ones. 1 is a head, 0 is a tail. All right, so next step. We want to calculate the cumulative sum of the observed results, and we want to store them in our third list. So we want a running total. I want to know how many heads do I have after a certain amount of trials. So I might see right here, I have 1 head after 1 trial. If I skipped ahead to here, this would be my 5th trial, I should have 3 heads after the 5th trial. So that's what my next step here is going to show me. So I'm going to do second stat. I'm going to go to ops, operations. I want that 6th choice cumulative sum of what's in the L2. And I'm going to stow it in the L3. So enter, and here's what mine shows. Yours will be different. So it's showing me that on the first trial, I had 1 head. On the second trial, I still had just 1 head. On the third trial, just had 1 head. But after the 4th trial, now I see 2 heads. On the 5th trial, now I see 3. So it's giving me a snapshot at any given point in time. How many heads have we accrued? So I can see that after 4 trials, I saw 2 heads. All right, next up, here's what we want. Ultimately, what we're building towards. We want the proportion of heads. So I want on any given trial number, how many heads did I see? So I'm going to look at the number of heads at a given trial number and then divide by what my trial number is. So I'm going to do L3, second 3, divide that by L1. So again, L3 is my running total, right? My amount of heads, and I'm going to divide that by what trial number am I on? And then I'm going to stow it in the L4, and then hit enter. Okay, so what this is showing for me is that on my first trial, I saw 1 head out of 1 trial. Here, I saw 1 head out of 2 trials. That's what's getting me that 0.5. Next, here I'm seeing 0.3 recurring. That's 1/3. I saw 1 head out of 3 trials. So that's what that information is showing us. So at any given trial number, what's the proportion of heads? All right, next thing to do. Now, I want to make sure that I've cleared all equations from my function list, and I want it to just look at y equals 0.5, y equals 1/2. Again, that is our theoretical chance of getting heads on any coin flip. So right here, y equals right here. I want that to be just 0.5, nothing else. I already have mine set at 0.5. Then I want to go to my stat plots. So second y equals, I want that first plot on. I want it on line graph. I want it to look at the X list of L1. So it's going to tell me trial 1, trial 2, trial 3, etc. L4 is my proportion of heads. So I'm keeping track of what my proportion of heads is over a period of time, over the amount of trials that have been conducted. I use the smallest mark possible. Okay, and then my window, these settings will really be the same except for this one right here. This one will change over time, the X max. So if I go to my window, I'm going to make it 0 to 5. So I'm only going to look at the first 5 trials to start. The X scale is 1. We're just scaling it by ones. Okay, Y min and max, 0 to 1, right? I could see 0 heads, okay? Or I could see all heads, right? So it's going to always show me as a probability between 0 and 1. So I could see 0 heads out of so many trials. I could see all heads out of so many trials. Usually we are somewhere in between, and we know theoretically we're looking at that 0.5. Okay, the Y scale should be 0.1, X res at 1. So then when you're ready, we hit graph. And I want to remind you that our answers are going to vary. They're going to vary. So for mine, for example, let me walk you through it. Right, this is trial 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're looking at the proportion of heads at any given trial number. So after my first trial, I had 100% heads. My first flip was a head. Okay, but after my second trial, I saw 1 out of 2 heads, which is why we're right here at 50%. On trial 3, I got another tail. So I only see 1 out of 3 heads, which is why I'm dipping below that 0.5 line. By trial 4, I got another head. So 2 out of 4 were heads. I'm right at that 50% mark right there. And then on my 5th trial, I got another head. So now I'm above it because 3 out of 5 were heads. 60% of my flips were heads. I'm above that 0.5 or 50% line. Okay, so now for the rest of this sheet, all you're doing is you're changing the trial number. So that first one was looking at 5 trials. Now I'm going to change it to 10 trials, and that would go in this space right here. So I'm going to go to my window, change this to a 10, and hit graph. And now I'm seeing what happens after 10 trials. And I would copy that in this spot right here. So I'm seeing, for my example, right, it starts off as kind of fluctuating, right? And then I'm seeing a greater proportion of heads than tails because I'm consistently above that line of Y equals 0.5. Yours will be different, okay? And then I want you to trace it over time. So look at 20 trials, look at 50 trials, look at 100, and then eventually at the very bottom, I want you to show me 300. So I'm going to skip ahead and show you the 300. So if I go to my window and I change this to 300, I want to look at all 300 coin flips, and I hit graph. This is what my example looks like, and I'm going to say it again. We can be different. So I can see that my results really fluctuate in the beginning. So after a small amount of data is collected, a small amount of trials, we see a lot of fluctuation, a lot of variation in the results that we're obtaining. But over time, in the long run, we should see that we start to stabilize and get closer to what the truth actually is, what that true probability should be of 0.5. So I can see that in my example here, there was a period of time that I saw a greater proportion of tails than heads, but again, it stabilized right over here. So what I'm trying to really stress is that there's more variability, more variation in the short run, but eventually that proportion of heads, it stabilizes at about 0.5, right? We know that chance behavior is unpredictable in the short run, but it becomes much more predictable in the long run. All right, I hope that was helpful. Have a good rest of your day.